Welcome to the Hardware Canucks Product Showcase. In this pilot episode, we're going to be taking a spin around a case designed by manufacturer nMedia, the HTPC-1000B. The 1000B is designed for home theater use and has a great set of features that really help it to stand out. It comes in both silver and black, however, for today we're only going to be demoing the black model. The case is available at a number of online Canadian retailers for roughly $125. So let's take a look. First off, we're going to take a quick look at the dimensions, and we see that this case is well suited for a media environment. It's going to fit in really nicely with your other home theater equipment. It is 17 inches wide, stands 5.4 inches tall with the optional feet, and is 16.3 inches in length. Zooming now to the front panel, we see it's constructed of a very clean looking anodized aluminum. This gives it a modern brushed appearance. The clean look is continued by hiding both the DVD-ROM and front ports behind hinge doors. The lettering and logos use subtle colors and texturing, and only the reflective silver reset and power buttons appear to stand out. The 1000B looks great. It's got class, but it doesn't steal the show. The front panel also has a 20 by 2 inch area, which is used to display the optional LCD, a feature we're going to take a look at later. As we check out the front ports, we have a full assortment. In the first cluster, audio and microphone jacks, eSATA, USB, and FireWire, and to the right, a 7-in-1 card reader and another USB port. Rotating now to the back, we see that there has been effort in ensuring decent ventilation in the case, something that's often overlooked on most media cases. We have well-ventilated side panels as well as vents on the top and over the CPU. One of the best features about the 1000B is that it has support for full ATX power supplies, as you can see here by the mounting area on the back. There's also the I/O space and two 60mm exhaust fans. As the case is intended for MATX motherboards, there are only 4 expansion bay slots. However, these are full height expansion slots and not merely half height, so no adapters required. And as we pull away, the top panel is held down by 2 thumb screws, which makes it really easy to get into and mess around. On the left side panel, another example of the efforts put into ventilation, an air intake port with a 92mm fan. Opening things up to the interior of the case, we have our MATX motherboard tray with mounting screws already in place, and up top there's plenty of room for a regular ATX power supply. This isn't going to fit any 1000-watt behemoths, but it is going to work for most reasonably sized power supplies. And for those who haven't yet invested in a modular power supply, there's plenty of room underneath the drive bays to stow cables and keep things clean. Again, we see our 60mm exhaust fans, which are described as silent. A little interesting note, nMedia decided to go with a Molex connector instead of a typical 3-pin fan connector that plugs directly into the motherboard. This means that the hardware installer is going to have to run the cable across the face of the motherboard or up and around to plug it into the power supply, instead of just being able to put it straight into a motherboard fan header. The drive tray is a solid unit for all the drives, so it easily slides out, but it takes all the drives with it. There is a single 5¼ inch bay and 4 3½ inch bays, the 2 on the top and the 2 sitting sideways underneath. Now strangely, the 2 bottom trays both have rubber grommets so as to reduce vibration from the hard drive. However, we don't see them on either of the top 2. Next, we take a look at airflow, a critical component of any case, especially media cases, with their smaller form factors and often cramped interiors. The 1000B has a simple concept. It pulls fresh air through the front and expels the warm air out the back. As we saw earlier, the case is well ventilated, and with some clean wiring, heat should not be a problem. As we've touched a few times on the ability to cleanly wire the case, let's take a look at things when fully assembled. All the cables fit nicely underneath the drive bays, which keeps the area over the components clean and clutter-free. And while adding drives to the bottom 2 trays will decrease the amount of room, there still should be plenty of space. Another important issue with many media cases is the options available for aftermarket coolers and video cards. Unfortunately, the 1000B was not all that friendly with aftermarket coolers. In testing with an average-sized aftermarket cooler that stood 5 inches tall, there was still a little more than an inch that stood above the top. Coolers are going to have to be less than 4 inches tall in order to make the cut. And while it appears that our 4-inch tall 4870 video card is a bit too tall for the case, and the top panel is slid on, there's a hair's breadth of space between. There's also enough length for 9-inch video cards, with 10 inches of space, enough for the video card and rear position power plugs. Finally, we jump back to the front panel and the LCD. One thing to keep in mind is that the LCD is not included with the case. It is an optional feature that must be purchased separately. And while it is a bit of a gimmick, it is definitely a fun gadget. The coloration makes it perfect to work in both light and dark situations. It has a dark green or black background with light green lettering. The LCD and software integrate with just about everything. It supports both Vista and XP media centers and monitors a whole host of other features, from system to networking and even email updates. And for those feeling a little adventurous or just bored, you can even design your own screen. So as we wrap up our product showcase on the nMedia HTPC-1000B, there are a few notes that we'd like to quickly recap. The 1000B is a great case for a home theater. It has the size and the style to fit perfectly. The base unit also rings in at a very reasonable price point, making it even more of an attractive option. And the interior is simple but well designed. On the flip side, while it is nice to have the choice of an optional LCD, it does increase cost and hassle in having to track it down. As well, the case is limited in aftermarket cooling solutions. And with that, thank you for watching this episode of the Hardware Canucks Product Showcase.